You just have to listen for the honking at 7, and then you know it's time to start.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, the meeting is now live.
Okay, thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of council for June 16, 2020. And I acknowledge that we are meeting this evening within the Squamish traditional territory. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. We have an agenda, and the agenda you see before you. I am going to add one item to the agenda. This is under new business. And under new business, I'm going to ask council to reconsider motion R 2020-264 temporary use permit TUP 1903 for a recreational vehicle site at 718 North Road. That will be under new business later this evening. So with that change to the agenda, could motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Agenda is approved. We'll go now to the adoption of minutes. We have minutes of the special council meeting of May 28, 2020. Motion to adopt. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor of adoption? Thank you. And the meeting, regular meeting of council for June 2, 2020. In a motion to adopt, please. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Lumley, thank you. All in favor of adoption? Thank you very much. They're adopted. Okay. Business arising from the minutes. Is there any business arising from that set, those sets of minutes that council would like to bring forward? Hearing none. We'll go down to proclamation. And is Vicky Dobbin in the crowd, corporate officer? Yes, I see her. We have a proclamation tonight in recognition of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. We could make Vicky live, and we'll invite her to speak to this.
Did that unmute me?
You're unmuted. Yes. Now I hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to see me, but I can go ahead with a few comments.
That's fine. Thank you.
Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. So I really wanted to thank you all for your acknowledgement of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and recognizing that elder abuse and neglect is a problem that needs the whole community to solve. So I'm the coordinator of the Sunshine Coast Community Response Network, and we're a group that includes Vancouver Coastal Health staff for mental health and home care, several programs of community services, the RCMP, community living, and interested community volunteers and businesses. Our goal is to prevent the abuse and neglect of vulnerable adults through public education, such as this proclamation, and also ensuring there's a coordinated response to situations of abuse and neglect. Our network includes these really highly skilled and dedicated responders, but we also need community members to ensure that there's a safety net by bringing situations of abuse and neglect to light. Because elder abuse is often invisible and people are reluctant to report. So we do have a role to play by keeping our eyes and ears open. And I wanted to add the COVID-19 crisis has added to the dynamics and stresses that cause abuse and has increased the isolation that makes seniors more vulnerable. In closing, I just want to say that our community has in the past really shown its caring, and now even more so through the COVID-19 crisis. I want to thank the town of Gibsons for its support of the Sunshine Coast Together Resilient Neighborhood Project, whose aim is to reduce isolation at the neighborhood level. I also wanted to acknowledge the Resource Center, who's doing work on the isolation of older adults, and the Seniors Planning Table, who's also addressed the abuse of adults. And our network has just published a handbook for people that are in regular contact with older adults to help them recognize and respond to abuse. So I'm really heartened that as a community, we're all tackling this issue together. And I just wanted to mention there'll be an article this Friday in the Coast Reporter. So there'll be more information and contact information in that article. Thanks again very much.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I appreciate all the work that you do on behalf of the whole Sunshine Coast and our community as well. I also like to draw attention to an article I sent out to council today, and this was from April Struthers of Whitworks. And this is the, she's going to be launching a handbook on handbook for prevention of adult abuse and neglect on the Sunshine Coast in recognition of Elder Abuse Day, and that's a June 25th. There's going to be a Zoom meeting on that. So I believe I sent council the information for that link today. So I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. It's a proclamation from the office of the Mayor, William Beamish, in recognition of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Whereas the town of Gibson seniors are valued members of society, convey a wealth of experience and wisdom in our community, and deserve to live with dignity and respect, it is our collective responsibility to ensure they live safely and fully in a community that cares about them. And whereas victims of elder abuse are parents, grandparents, neighbors, and friends, elder abuse is not limited by race, gender, culture, and circumstances, and whether physical, emotional, or financial, elder abuse takes an unacceptable toll on individuals and families. And whereas seniors who experience abuse or neglect face a heightened risk of health-related complications, and financial abuse can rob our seniors of the security they have built over a lifetime, tragically, many older adults suffer in silence, burdened by fear, shame, or impairments that prevent them from speaking out about abuse. And whereas combating abuse of older adults will help improve the quality of life for all seniors in our community and allow seniors to continue to live as independently as possible and to contribute to the life and vibrancy of the town of Gibsons. Now, therefore, I, William Beamish, Mayor of Gibsons, do hereby proclaim that June 16, 2020 be known as Elder Abuse Awareness Day in the town of Gibsons. Proclamation 2020-07, July 16, 2020. And thank you very much, Vicki. And for council's benefit, Vicki and I met yesterday, and we had a photo taken by the Coast Reporter, and that will appear magically on Friday, I hope, so that you'll see that we had a banner in front of the town office that was displayed. So thanks again, Vicki.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
And that copy of that proclamation, we will get to you somehow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the only proclamation we have this evening. We'll go on to our agenda, and the first item are, the next item are inquiries. This is the opportunity for members of the public to inquire about any item that is on the agenda this evening for discussion. Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask anybody in the meeting as an attendee if they wish to ask a question of council to please use the raise the hand feature, and I'll turn on your audio. And Mr. Mayor, I do see one here.
Yep. Judith, we see your name, but we don't see you. You're on mute still. You're still muted, Judith.
Oh, no. How's that?
You got it.
Okay, sorry, I missed that prompt. Mayor and council and staff, I have a question about, well, this agenda. Actually, it's probably quite a few agendas, and it's about our variances and our 50-meter requirement. I wonder if all of the members of council and you, Mayor, consider where you live a neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, so why is a variance only 50 meters?
Yeah, it's under the Local Government Act. It's not something that's prescribed. We can change that, and certainly that has been brought up to be discussed on change. I mean, we have different things, in my view, and I'm not speaking on behalf of council because council might have different opinions. There's other things of that nature, like temporary use permits. Temporary use permit tends to be more of a use in the neighborhood and maybe have more impact, where a variance could simply be myself affecting the side yard setback with my next door neighbor. And it has a very specific impact on my property and the neighbor's property, and I suspect that's why the province has set 50 meters as opposed to a much wider scope. But I don't know. I don't know what their thinking was for setting that. I know that it has brought up. We have asked council, asked staff to look at the options of extending it, and council will be having that discussion.
Yeah, because I live in a neighborhood, Heritage Hills,
Yeah.
and I, really, if there was a change coming on, or was a building with a variance, which there was not long ago, and
Yeah.
really I'm not that far away from it, and the whole neighborhood is affected, the whole neighborhood, and it's important that everyone understands that it's not just about the immediate neighbors.
Everybody has a chance to comment on it. It's just
Uh-huh.
the immediate neighbors are the ones who are notified of a
But a lot
variance.
of people are not engaged. They don't know.
Well, yeah.
And it needs to be, it needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now how do I go up?
Any other inquiries?
I don't see any at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll proceed with committee reports, item 7.1. And the first item is that the recommendation of the minutes of the Planning and Development Committee meeting held June 2, 2020 be received. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, that was your committee, so I assume you'll second that. Thank you. Okay. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Items arising from that. That was the first one is 7.1.2 development variance permit application for 308 Skyline Drive. Recommendation that that the Planning and Development Committee recommends that council direct staff to notify neighbors of the development variance permit application DVP 2020-03 for 308 Skyline Drive, and the staff bring forward a report outlining the implications of increasing notifications to 100 meters. There we go, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. So would somebody move that? Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Ladwig, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that's approved. 7.1.3 development permit application process, that the planner one staff report be referred to the next planning and development committee meeting. That was done, but I guess we just have to confirm that as well. It just happened to come before this meeting. So Councillor Ladwig, would you move that? Thank you.
I'm actually a bit confused by it. We had
Well,
discussed,
yeah.
is that an addition that came onto the agenda after today's Planning and Development Committee?
It didn't anticipate the Planning and Development Committee being before we received it. That's all. So, corporate officer, what would you like to do with it?
No, I can confirm that just came through because it was at the last planning and development meeting. It was on the
That's
record.
all. Yeah. So it's just process at this point in time. It's being dealt with. We know. So if you
Right.
moved it, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Crowell, thank you. And I wish they were all as easy as this to say it's already been done. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Cannabis policy and survey results. Recommendation that council adopt the cannabis policy subject to limiting the number of production facilities to 4. Somebody move that. Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade seconded. Further discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. Thank you. And the Planning and Development Committee meeting June 16, 2020. This is item 7.2 and 7.21. And this is a recommendation coming out of the meeting this afternoon that recommends that council opt into the liquor and cannabis regulation branch's expedited process for the authorization of temporary expansions to service areas and endorse pre-approval to cover all liquor primary and manufacturer establishments in the town of Gibsons who may apply for an expanded service area. Somebody move that. Councillor Crowell, seconded by Councillor Ladwig. Everybody understands it, and you were part of the conversation a few hours ago. So any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. Thank you. Administration reports, planning. The first report is the planning is on the cannabis policy, and refer to the Director of Planning's report titled Cannabis Policy. Be received. First of all, a motion to receive all reports. Actually, I'll take a motion. Councillor Crowell, Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor of receipt of all reports? Thank you. They're all on the table. So the recommendation here from planning, did you wish to speak to this, Director of Planning?
Thank you, Mayor. I can speak to it briefly. The only change in this policy is section 4.1.2.3, which states not more than 4 cannabis production facilities may be located in the town of Gibsons. So that was a recommendation that came out of PDC,
Yes.
and I just included it in the policy. And then the referral comments were verbally presented at the PDC, and I just included them in this report.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Council, somebody will wish to move the recommendation that council adopts the cannabis policy? Councillor Crowell, thank you. Councillor D'Andrade. Further discussion? I mean, this one's one that was we were charged with when we came on board, and it's nice to see it coming to fruition now that we have a policy that is easily understandable and implementable in our community. So no further discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for your work on that. The next one is the COVID-19 update. And this is a verbal report from the corporate officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to take this opportunity to give council a brief update about how the town is responding to COVID-19 now that we're entering different phases of our response. And I know council's had the opportunity to be copied on many of the emails that have gone around, but I wanted to go over the changes that have taken place. On the 20th of May, we actually opened our doors with a limited reopening. So the town hall hours are now 9 to 4, and this allows staff to properly set up and then take down at the end of the day all the measures necessary to have our doors open. And these include, we've had the plexiglass barriers installed along the whole front counter service area. We've actually divided the front counter service area so that the ICBC and the admin sides of town hall have their own entrance, and only one member of the public can be inside each side at one time. And we have shut down the parking lot so that people can safely line up in the parking lot while they wait. And this has allowed us to take some of the utility tax payments before the deadline came through, and for ICBC to start offering driver services again, because those could not be done remotely. So all of the ICBC functions that could have been done remotely by email and phone, they're still available by email and phone, but the option to come into the office is here as well. For staff in the office, we're seeing more staff working out of the office, and this is in response to having our front service counter open. So we've implemented measures to make sure all staff in town hall are safe and working in a safe environment. And these include installing plexiglass barriers between some workstations that might be closer than 2 meters together. We've put occupancy limits on some of our shared spaces. We have new guidelines to ensure staff know when to clean any equipment that is in shared spaces, things of that nature, break room, kitchen, and also to make sure that staff can maintain that 2 meter distance as much as possible. And when it's not possible, we have the use of masks and visors where appropriate. The response from the public has been mixed. We've had some really phenomenal people come through that have been really great in their response. And we have had some people come through who are at the other end of the spectrum, and it's been hard on staff, especially on the ICBC side of the service counter. They've struggled a little bit because they are very popular. I think they're the only ICBC insurance to be open in the town to serve in person, and especially with the driver services that they're offering as well. And the reception's been mixed. I think we still need to educate everyone that we are still under a state of emergency in the province, and we are still dealing with COVID-19, even though we have reopened our doors. And we just ask that everyone have a little bit of patience as we're able to serve them safely as much as we can. In response to opening, we've also developed a safety plan that is posted on our door and on our website. And that's in response to a provincial order that required all businesses to open to have a safety plan. And I'll just share my screen briefly so that you can have a look at it. And I've lost it. One moment. There we go.
There you go, yeah.
There we go. So this just goes over the measures that we've taken to maintain a safe work environment in Town Hall. Staff have been working incredibly well to implement these measures and make sure everybody is safe. And I just wanted to just bring to council's attention what a great job everybody has done in reaction to the very weird circumstances we are now working under. And it's been stressful, and they've handled it incredibly well. And even though we're only operating at about 60% capacity, I think we're still maintaining a very excellent level of service. And I just wanted to bring that to council's attention.
Thank you. And for my part, I can say I've received no complaints from anybody about the services offered or the level of service that's operated in the town. I think people have been very understanding. And thank you for the leadership you've given me, because I know this has been all on you primarily in terms of thinking your way through this and then implementing the changes that have been extensive. And it's a lot of work and a lot of, I'm sure, sleepless nights thinking, oh, what about this? What about that sort of thing? So thank you for all of that. And I think things are working very well. I like it because when I walk down the hall, people get out of my way. People don't want to be near me. And so that I don't know if it's because I'm an old guy or because they don't want to catch anything, but we are learning how to distance ourselves in spaces. So I appreciate that. Council have any questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Ladwig.
Well, I don't know if this is a question for the corporate officer, but it is related to COVID-19. I'm wondering if there's been any discussions with the SCRD about recreational facilities and what the plan is to reopen there. Because I actually have heard a few complaints about people wanting to see those services back. And they're feeling like, you know, taxes did increase this year and yet their services are down, and there is a bit of frustration there. And there is some, you know, Dr. Bonnie Henry gave approval to open up gyms and facilities like that after the May 13th long weekend, or sorry, the May long weekend. And yet we're not. So I'm just curious what the plan is there.
Councillor Kroll, you're on the board.
It has come up with the board. The recreational staff are working at looking at what facilities that are going to be opened and how they can open them. It may initially be one ice surface and one pool reopens because of, you know, the cost involved in opening the facility and not being able to recoup on a revenue side for the costs that they're going to be able to recover through revenue because of the restrictions in place. So the RD staff are looking at it, and I'm suspecting it's probably going to come up at one of our next meetings next week. But it's quite complicated what they have to deal with and the level of staff they have to have in the facility. And if they're not going to be able to, you know, if they open 4 facilities and it's just going to be a, you know, a huge loss, so it's an assessment process they're going through right now. Probably not the answer you wanted, but you know, they are working on it, and it's really complex, and it's exacerbated by the staff levels they have to maintain in the facilities, whether there's one person comes in or it's packed. And so they're looking at overhead costs, infrastructure costs, the whole bit, to come up with the best equation to make it, you know, recreation is something like 42% of the RD budget.
Oh.
So it's a huge amount of money. And, you know, we're lucky here on the coast with, you know, 2 ice surfaces and, you know, a really good rec center here in Gibsons and 3 pools for 35,000 people, which is pretty amazing. But, you know, it may not be everything that opens. You're on mute.
Councillor Ledwig, you're muted.
Sorry. If you could keep us apprised of that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I certainly will.
I would appreciate if you would bring up to the board that certainly with regards to the pool and Gibsons, that's a lot of seniors programming and fitness in that pool. And I think it's a very important piece. It doesn't have all the bits and pieces that the seashell pool has. So I would suggest it's an easier one to open and maintain. Regardless, I'd like to see them both open, but I would very much like to see the one here. And I know that when the fitness center is open here, it's very busy, and there's everybody's anxious to get back into their programs, and I think that I would very much like to see that happen. So you can convey that to the board. CAO, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly echo the leadership of Lindsay that you pointed out. I just want to highlight a couple other things, just how we're working on the outside workers as well. They have had to adjust. We've had to develop safe operating procedures for just about everything we used to do. We just have to do it a little bit differently. And but we're wrapping up more and more projects, including the couple of projects that have been approved in budget. Regionally, we're still operating with the emergency operations centers. It's at a level 1. And there are this executive group, the CIOs. We meet every morning at 3 times a week now. We have a call, so we're still very much on our discussions. And I think one of the things we've been talking about is the program review to make sure that we document and implement this model, this COVID for emergency planning, or vice versa. And also one of the things that came out of that is the neighborhood preparedness, which, as we talked about in the presentation we had last week, a couple of weeks ago, that's an area that's showed some opportunities as well. So that's what we have for now, and nothing else on my end. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any further discussion or comments under this item? It'll be interesting to see just how long this goes on for. I for one, am extremely thankful that the measures that are being taken, and if they continue to protect us for a long time, and we are able to miss the second wave, it'll all be worth it. And that's what's important right now. Councillor Kroll?
I'd just like to sort of, thank all staff. The few times I've come into the town hall, everyone's been really great. It's, they're dealing with a really awkward situation. It's like having to walk on eggshells. So, certainly Lindsay and Manny and, some of the other people I've been dealing with, it's a job really well done. And, I think a lot of people have taken note on the amazing job that has been done, and sorry we can't give you a pay raise.
Ah. Well, you could try. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on with that. We now go to a report to the Director of Finance, a revised statement of financial information, Sophie report for 2019. And this is pages 35 to 85 in your agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the 2019 Statement of Financial Information, I'm going to call it SOFI for short, was presented to Council at the June 2nd Council meeting for approval. Subsequent to that approval, a review of the report identified a miscategorization of select expenses, and it was between the employer and the vendor reports. And the purpose of this report is to provide Council with a revised version for approval. And I do want to thank Councillor De Andrade for following up on the information that was provided in the original SOFI report, and her inquiry prompted a review of the numbers, which helped the numbers which were reported for her expenses, which helped us discover that there was an issue behind the scenes on the report and to take a second look. So thank you very much for that. So a review identified that expenses that were included in the schedule of payments to suppliers and goods of services, which is the vendors, when they should have been included in the schedule of remuneration and expenses. So really it was a switch between which report they ended up on, and that was what the discrepancy was. And we realized after a bit of digging that it was a result of an error made quite a while ago, early last year, regarding the initial setup of individual accounts payable modules in the financial software. So in addition to that issue, we also had an earlier change that we made between the two reports, which was also related to that issue, and it resulted in a duplicate removal of an amount. So the three categorized expenses amounts are noted on page 2, and I've also provided excerpts of the revised schedules which highlight the changes so you can see the overall effect on the two reports. And so on page 2, the first table shows the three miscategorized expenses, and that was a result of that initial error way back. I've also provided excerpts of the two SOFI reports that required the correction. And as mentioned, it's really a difference between which report the information showed up on, and we wanted to make sure it was on the correct one. And so I provided the two reports, the correction, which shows the original expense amounts along with the revised amounts. And I've highlighted the numbers that have changed since the original. And then the second table, or the third table on page 2, is item number 2, other employees, and the revised consolidated total required to be changed as well. So those were the areas that were affected. And on page 3 is sort of the counter side to that, and it shows the final adjustments to the vendor side, which is payments of miscellaneous payments of $25,000 and under, and that's also highlighted. So I'm providing the revisions that have been incorporated into a revised report for Council's approval, which is attached to my report. Once approved, the revised report will be sent to the ministry. Again, I've already given them a heads up to disregard the first one. I'm setting a revised. And in addition, we've updated our internal procedures to prevent this type of error occurring in the future. So we have something new to look at. It hadn't happened before, and it took us a bit of time to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. So again, I appreciate Councillor D'Andrade. She's paying attention, which is wonderful. So thank you. So our recommendation is that council receive and approve the revised 2019 SOFI, and then I would forward that to the ministry after that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, on the original one, I had 0 expenses because I've never made any expense claims in the whole year. And now it's 1,029. So unless there's a check sitting in my box at the town hall for 1,029 bucks, I'd have to vote against this. I just haven't made any expense claims for the whole year. So
Okay.
it was 0. The first report was 0, and Mayor, you did make a comment that, but now it's 1,029. So I just don't know where that came from.
Oh, darn it. Okay.
If you want me to make an expense report, I will. But
No, not at all.
It makes your life easier.
No, no. So what I can suggest then, and oh my goodness, my apologies for that. It's just not my year when it comes to this report. I can look into it, and I can either bring back a report to revised, or that's interesting. Potentially, is it possible, Mr. Mayor, if we just put this on hold for a moment, it'll give me a bit of chance to dig on my other computer while you go on with the meeting, and we bring it back?
It is. No, let's do that. We'll just move on, and we'll because that'll be reflected in the next item as well, 8.4.
Yes. Yeah.
How about we go on to council reports, and we'll come back to the Director of Finance.
Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you. Okay. So council reports. We have an item listed under there, and council all received that, and that's the proposal from our youth councillors, both from Ailish and from Gravity. And this is in terms of the Sunshine Coast Youth Council. And I'll ask Councillor McKenzie, if you would like to present that again, just as the public may not have it in front of them. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the Sunshine Coast Youth Council, sorry, I'm just going to pull it up on my screen. Sorry, my screen is glitching. Okay. I've got it. All right. So essentially what it is we felt that it's important to have the perspective of young people present in local governments on the Sunshine Coast, and not just like on the town of Gibsons. We would also like to see it on the STRD with the Seashell Bend in Seychelles. And we also included Squamish, Powell River, Catet Regional District, the Tla'amin Nation. I believe that's everyone that we included. But what we wanted to do with that was we wanted to get a really diverse and wide group of people, specifically young people in high school together, who would be able to represent their areas and be able to speak up for themselves and talk about what their needs in the community are. Right now during COVID, I would totally imagine there's a need for like a network of like study groups or something like that. And that's a resource that's kind of hard to pull together all by ourselves. And that's just an example that I can think of. But yeah, so we just wanted a way for young people to have a voice and also to be able to get the support or help that they need. And yeah, did I do a good job of explaining that, or there's still questions?
I just had one more thing to say. It also is, so each council, or the council that each people, all the youth represent, they will go back and report back to that council or that regional district and tell them like what they discussed in their meetings, just so that we can get some connection between youth and councils.
Yeah. And your annual budget?
It is, Gravity, do you remember that off the top of your head? I have to look at the page. We are asking for $50 per delegate. And so what a delegate is, every area that we included gets like one delegate. And so ideally, if we had the number of 16 delegates, and keep in mind the SCRD and the Catet Regional District, they would have a delegate for every area that exists within their jurisdiction. So the ideal amount of delegates would be 16, and so that would result in an $800 budget total. And that is not pay, it wouldn't be like the town of Gibsons is paying $100 towards it. It would be the town of Gibsons would put in $50 for their delegate. The town of town of Sechelt would put in $50 for their delegate, and so on. And basically what that money would cover is, one, a Zoom membership so that we can have meetings that are longer than 40 minutes. Also, we're looking into if the situation allows for it. We would like to hold, maybe like bi-monthly or monthly meetings in person. Obviously, if COVID is still we're still in a state of emergency, we would just be using Zoom. But yeah, so that would also cover if we were doing an in-person meeting, like ferry costs or bus fare, or just like food and drinks as well.
Your overall budget, if it all was to come together, would be about $800. The core budget, though, would probably be closer to, well, certainly for the Zoom and other things, so that and the town of Gibsons would be a contributory to that budget. So, yeah, good. And how you have sent this out to everybody else now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
When
Have you
I
had-
last checked our email, I haven't seen any responses from other communities. I don't know if Gravity, have you seen?
I had checked just an hour ago and it didn't look like we've gotten any responses. I think that it may have been, no, we haven't gotten any other responses as of right now.
It will just be showing up on their agenda packages at this time because of the timing of everything. So that council have any questions about the proposal? Councilor D'Andrade.
Yes, well, great. It's fantastic. So really happy to hear that. In just my briefly calculation, $800 doesn't seem to cover trips every 2 months for the 16 delegates. So I don't know. I know you want to start like modest, but I don't know. In my mind, it has to be minimum double, right? Because when you talk about the distance that people will be traveling to go to Squamish, for example, or for people to come, so it's just an idea. And I'm sure you will get further support, right, for that. So I'm not. I don't think this is over budgeting, but. That's one suggestion. And I really do hope you continue the school protest, the Fridays, climate Fridays for climate. And yeah, it's an interesting world now, adding COVID, but the environment crisis hasn't stopped. And as far as I understand, the commitments that the country's made are not really there to solve the situation. So it is, I think, is in the hands of youth. So I commend you for that. And I think you should ask for a higher budget.
Okay, that's certainly something we'll consider. We were thinking for that budget, we made it in mind that the meetings, should they be in person, they'd usually be here on the coast in a central location. So, and the majority of the delegates would be on the coast, if I'm doing my mental math right.
I think, and also depending on the COVID situation and how many meetings we could even have, if meetings in person are even an opportunity, as well as we kind of thought to some extent it would be up to the group how often they wanted to meet. Like maybe they only had one meeting where they all were together and the rest of them were over Zoom, just because that's more practical. But Ailish, you can comment on this if you disagree, but I was thinking that we would do it so that they can decide at the end of the day how often they want to meet in person.
Yeah. Also, I just remembered we also put in a line where we originally were just asking for that 800 for the first 6 months, just to see how far the money actually went. And then we would reapply for extra funding if there was a need for extra.
And this would start in September or the fall?
Ideally, yes.
Council, any other comments? I would certainly entertain a motion to because the dollar amount is not going to impact our overall budget, but make a motion that the town of Gibsons support this and to commit their $50 at this time. I see Councillor Lumley move that, and Councillor Crowe.
I had a comment. I was just
okay.
Yeah, because it's been a couple budgets now where like the grants and aid, it seems like, at the end of it, we're like struggling to give money away. Like people don't reapply or people apply and there's only a couple people apply and there's limitations to what we can give them. I mean, it seems like an obvious answer. If we have this money that we want to, it seems like the students should just apply for a grant and aid as well, I would imagine. So that would just Our
next grant and aid intake is September, I think, so that would be an opportunity for that. Yeah, for sure. Councillor Kroll?
I certainly move that we fund it. The only problem with grant and aid is grant and aid isn't for continuing activities. So, I would recommend that, it would be good to get a report back after they get it up and running and based on the success of it. And if we have to make an adjustment to the financial support, but I'm certainly, for the amount they're asking for, it's certainly a reasonable request. And I would like to see it made, pending the first report back from our youth counselor, that we make it a budget line and give it continued support.
Councillor Diandrade?
Suggestion, idea, it just occurred to me. I know students are super busy, but if there's anyone, I know some people like are into web designer, and if there was a page, a website, that would be wonderful because everything could be updated and anyone would know immediately what you guys are up to, the public. And I think it would garnish a lot of support for the initiative. So that's just a suggestion.
Yeah. A good idea. Are you prepared to second the motion, Councillor Diandrade, for that we support the $50 at this time? Okay, so any further discussion of that? I'm sure the Director of Finance will find $50 somewhere in the budget or under her desk soon. So any further comments on that? All in favor of support, Councillor Diandrade?
Just a clarification, is $50 per student. So we now are paying that too.
Well, we could contribute double. It's intended to be one student for each locale, but I mean, I wouldn't want to see one of our students left out. So that I certainly entertain Councillor Kroll to make that $100. And Diandrade, do you agree? Okay.
Take it out of my expense account.
Yeah, well, there you go. So at this point in time, I think it's good that we show the support so that if they get queried from any other source, our council has stepped up. Okay, so all in favor then of $100 to support the program, and and all in favor of support of the program as well. Included in that resolution, we support the program and subsidize with $100. I think we got that. Okay. thank you very much, guys, for your submission, and we will be coming back to you shortly on the
Alright.
agenda. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting it.
Any other from council? I have a few items that I wanted to go over. I have a short list tonight, so. Okay, if I start that. Just to catch you up, and the last meeting, it's been a fairly busy time. I did tape a speech for the Elphinstone grads, and I think I circulated that to council, so you saw what I've said. I don't know that it's been published yet, but it'll be coming out as a YouTube, I think. I also, in concert with Councillor Kroll, attended the Black Lives Matter parade in Sechelt. Tremendous event, and a very huge turnout, and very well managed and well organized. I really appreciate that. I made a presentation to the Gibsons Rotary Club last week, I guess that was, and I copied you also on that presentation, so you can see what I said to them. Working with staff now to organize the Gibsons Community Leadership Zoom meeting. That's for the June the 23rd at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And I believe the notice has gone out, and I believe an agenda has gone out for that. And that'll be a challenge for our corporate officer to manage, but we'll get through that as well. So in concert with Councillor Kroll and CAO and Donna McMahon, we did a walk on Sharman Creek this week. Looking at it from the perspective of a stream keepers project. I also like the Councillor Kroll's healing forest area. I believe that the bottom of that ravine is actually just a gorgeous, quiet area, and enjoying the forest. So it's something we can certainly consider, but it was very, very worthwhile walk. I followed up, you recall the last meeting, Youth Councillor Mackenzie brought up the issue of racism and concern with the youth in the community. I have arranged a meeting with April Struthers, Whitworks. Now, April has, you'll recall, she made a delegation to council over a year ago now, where she talked about a racism policy and declaration. And I've arranged to have a further conversation with her. I had also an inquiry from a member of the public about how we are going to further the conversation on racism on the coast. And I've reached out to Mayor Seegers and to Chair Pratt, and to see if they have any thoughts on that, as to whether it's something that as a government we should do, or whether it should be a grassroots discussion that we would participate in and support. So, but I want to talk to April Struthers, following up on Youth Councillor Mackenzie's discussion at the last meeting. I also had a Zoom meeting with Mark Collins, the BC Ferries, along with Councillor or Chair Pratt and Mayor Seegers, and talked about the ferries and the different things that have now a lot has evolved in the media about it, sort of thing. And the fact that they're running at 50% capacity is not really 50% capacity. Their numbers are still running at the kind of capacity they can handle at this time. They are 50% capacity doesn't mean that the car deck is only open for 50%. Half the car deck's open. It's all open. And the average number of people in a car is 2, and the number of foot passengers is not that great. So they're running, about 65% on their occupancy at this time. So, and this afternoon I attended a public market board meeting, and I'd asked to be put on the agenda there. One of the challenges we've had with them is I'm the liaison, council liaison to the public market. Attending a meeting has been almost impossible because they hold them at the same time as we hold our committee meetings. So they have agreed to move their board meetings to the 4th Tuesday of the month, so that I will be able to attend in the future and participate in those discussions. So that, as I say, it's been a fairly busy time, among other things. But I just wanted to bring council up to speed on those activities, and I try to copy you on things that I do as I do them, and I think I managed to get that through fairly well. So, Any questions about what I've done, why I've done it, who I've done it with? Okay. Okay. Other comments from other councilors? Councilor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I just wanted to mention the Solidarity March was, a really incredibly moving event. I think you captured most of it. I just wanted to mention, I did send a note to Staff Sergeant Hallam on the really great job the RCMP did in supporting the parade. The police have been under a lot of criticism, but they had a presence there. They distanced themselves. They, very in a very organized fashion, they coordinated traffic. They closed intersections. I noticed, the RCMP members going along the rows of cars, explaining to people what was going on. So, if you were 10 cars back in the blocked intersection, you knew what was happening. So I certainly wanted to extend to Sergeant Hallam and her staff what a great job they did. It, they helped support a community event, and so kudos to them. The Sharman Creek was an interesting walk. And, from the healing forest point of view, I'll take the thin edge of the wedge any day. So if we can get an area established, I would like to see, as much as we can incorporate into the healing forest. There can be special areas within it, and certainly that lower ravine is a particularly beautiful spot. It's you wouldn't believe that you're less than a 5-minute walk from traffic and the hubbub of the lower village. The Ferry Commission, it's a buzz again because BC Ferries mentioned that residents would get assured boarding. It's everyone's now a resident regardless of where you're from. So the system isn't working. I believe they're having another conference call with Mark Collins tomorrow. So we'll see what happens there. Sort of a landmark on the Gibsons waterfront suffered a bit of a tragedy on the weekend. The tugboat Reliant 5, which was built originally in 1953, I believe, and was quite a historic vessel on the Pacific Northwest coast. She used to make runs to Alaska. It's been going through about a 14-year restoration, and very sadly on Saturday, she sank in her berth. Coast Guard and different resources were brought in, and she was refloated today and is being taken into, I believe they're taking her into Shelter Island in Richmond to get her out of the water and see what the damage is. But it was sort of sad to see a vessel that has been, captured on so many web pages as a local landmark, subject of a lot of paintings done by local artists. So I hope that she's able to be saved. That's about it from me. Just on another note, I did send an email to Mayor Beamish this morning. I had occasion yesterday to go over to Sydney, and I was really impressed with several things. It's the first time I've had an opportunity to walk about Sydney. We took our search and rescue vessel over for some repair and had to wait while the repairs were being done. But I was really impressed with their community art. It's incredibly impressive. I think it's something that's worthy of taking note. And there's, I think, it's twice the size of us. It's flat, so they have a level playing field. But I think it's really interesting what they've done and some of the things that they've obviously going through some of the same growth problems we're having. And I think it's an interesting community to keep an eye on. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Ladwig.
Just a few quick things. I attended the library board meeting on Monday, and they brought up a few things that I thought would be of interest to council. The board is looking into public transit in front of the library, and I'm sure this is obvious to anyone who's thought about it, but it turns out we don't have public transit that goes to the library. And so considering the demographic of our community, that's a challenge, especially considering the steep hill that the library sits on. And someone also notably pointed out that that means we don't have public transit to town hall either. And so, you know, that's something that we should probably look at as a community. So they're talking to they're starting to talk to other support services to see if they can get a joint letter going to BC Transit to try to figure out how to get some kind of public transit to South Fletcher. So I advise them to talk to the Senior Society, Councillor DeAndretti, as well as a museum and others to see if we can try to get some type of bus route going around to that part of the neighborhood. They also are looking into or questioning free Wi-Fi hotspots in town. Providing Wi-Fi has become a really important service for the library, and lots of communities provide that in other communities. The library provides it as well as the municipalities. And so they're inquiring about what the town's policy or thoughts are on providing free Wi-Fi hotspots in the community for individuals that don't have access to Wi-Fi. So I'm just kind of tabling that for people to ponder and think about. And then finally, they are reopening. They have come up with a reopening plan, and they're proposing to reopen on July 7th, barring any new news to COVID-19. So they do have a good reopening strategy with lots of risk planning associated with it, but they do plan to reopen. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Kroll?
Just with respect to the transit, the bus originally used to come down Gibson's Way, go across North Fletcher and down across South Fletcher when it did the loop, and then come back along Gower Point and that way. So I could bring it up at the regional district because they do have a say on bus routes.
Great.
Can I just quickly make a comment about that? BC Transit said the two reasons they don't come down South Fletcher is in part because School Road is challenging, but I didn't know that they used to come. So that's great. But they also said it's our traffic calming measures that we've put in on South Fletcher. It now is they're too high for the bus. Whatever
calming things are on Franklin and the bus manages.
I don't know. That's just that's what they said to the board member that phoned and inquired about it. So if you can inquire,
I'll raise the issue.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Sure. Not sure if you can hear me.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to go for it. What I was going to mention about the road, Dave Newman is not with us here today, but yes, that is certainly an issue. But also, when the larger buses used to come through the road, the subsurface of that road is not really designed for those buses, and they have quite a bit of an impact on the road as well. But we can certainly dig that up a little further and see where we stand, because I do think they have different buses now as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
We seem to have lost Mayor Beamish. In anticipation of him returning, could I suggest that possibly Councillor Ladwig assume chair as Deputy Mayor?
Okay, give me a second. Sorry about this. Okay. Thanks, Corporate Officer. Does anybody else have any reports to provide? Councillor DeAndretti?
Actually, it's actually a question for the CEO because he mentioned about the buses, but I'm wondering in terms of the road, right? The impact it caused on the road. But I'm wondering if it's regarding the size of the bus and a smaller bus, because I think, you know, we have, well, this is a 30 years issue in the town with regards to buses, but I still have hope that eventually we could have a smaller bus running town instead of these mega buses, right? That sometimes, you know, they are even empty and things like that. So I was just curious if the issue is with any bus or obviously just big buses.
Councillor Lumley.
That's a great point, and it's been raised with BC Transit every time they meet with council in the past. Every year that's asked, and every year they say it's not possible. Is there not a bus that goes down like Marine Drive there past the post office?
Yeah.
Well, it's not close enough.
Sorry.
Somebody can't walk up the street and go to the library, or?
For some people,
My fear is that buses are going to be ripping down every street. And plus there's not that many people live on that. It's more of a commercial street that the bus goes down at the present time. I'm sure you'll get a lot of blowback from residents if you start introducing a bus back onto a more heavy residential street, right? So anyway, those are my thoughts. But smaller buses, yes.
Councillor Kroll.
Again, the bus used to go down Wynn Road, and they changed the route because in the winter the grade was sufficiently steep that the bus usually slid down Wynn Road and couldn't, because of the compound grades, couldn't make the corner by the post office. So, you know, as I said, the buses used to do North and South Fletcher and Wynn Road, and it was changed. And I think it was because of the size of the buses. Maybe with the smaller ones, it might be revisited. Is
there a will, Councillor Ladwig, would you like to propose we actually draft a letter to Transit in the regional district asking if they could examine the possibility?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, that motion, yeah.
Somebody second that? Councillor Kroll. Further, Councillor D'Andrade?
I think if we're gonna have this, write a letter and ask in case there is even a remote possibility, but I think it's important also if well, in the event that they say yes, to do a study of impact of the neighborhood, right? Because obviously you might solve one problem and cause further problems. So it's just, it would be ideal these things go parallel in case there's a positive response.
Councillor Lumley?
The CAO already said that, I mean, I guess Dave Newman has to verify it, but the subgrade on the road, you might have been gone, Mr. Mayor, at the time, but the subgrade on that road, South Fletcher, cannot withstand buses.
Okay.
That's why the route was changed. So you can, I don't know why we draft a letter if the road's not unfit for buses to go down in the first place. But anyway, my thoughts.
If it were a smaller bus, it might be accommodated, sort of thing. So I think that perhaps we should ask them to invite them to come to us and talk to us about it then, and let's do that. Invite BC Transit to come to a council meeting.
Or make it an electric bus at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Come to a council meeting and talk to us. Or planning development, where should we be? Planning development, we can have a discussion. Okay, we'll invite them to come to a planning and development committee to talk about the opportunity for improved bus service in the town of Gibsons, including to the town hall, library, and school district. Okay. And Councillor Ladwig, and that was seconded by Councillor Kroll, I believe. Okay. All in favor? Thank you. In favor. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other information come forward at this time? Councillor Lumley?
I'd just like to acknowledge that the House Sound Pulp and Paper has taken initiative with restaurants and hospitality businesses. They've been buying up gift certificates.
Excellent.
And in plans of giving them to their employees, whether it be for rewards or birthdays or Christmases. So and they've been doing it like on a fairly large basis. So I just like to acknowledge their community involvement and like to thank them. I'm sure every restaurant and bar would like to thank them as well. So I'll just do it for them right now.
That's good to hear. Councillor Kroll?
Wrong mouse. Sort of in light of that, because I think it's really important with businesses struggling to get back on their feet. With, you know, I don't know if there's any issue, but as maybe as the mayor and council, we could send them, how sound, a letter thanking them for the support of local businesses and what they're doing to ensure their recovery.
We definitely could. Is that a motion? Okay, seconded by Councilor D'Andrade. Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much. I don't have to write the letters. Somebody else does. Okay. Seeing nothing further under this item, then we'll go on to correspondence. And we have correspondence for the weeks ending June 2 and June 8. Motion first that they be received. Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. Any items arising from either of those correspondence packages I'd like to bring to attention? Okay. I'm sorry, did I miss a hand there? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ladwig, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I'd like to bring the from the 0602 report from Tracy Ross regarding the letter complained about the GDEU.
Okay.
I'm not really even sure what I'm asking for here, other than obviously there's a chain of correspondence regarding the decommissioning of the GDEU. And I guess I'm looking for council support or the CEO support to work with staff on responding to them. The latest letter that was sent out to residents that didn't respond to us. And so I want to make sure that we honor that commitment. But they are.
Yeah, I think that's all chart. I'm not obviously involved in that, so they and so that.
Right, so maybe the CAO.
Yeah, CAO.
Absolutely. I think the last time the preparation of the letter went well between yourself and Dave and Elizabeth, and we could keep that going.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor D'Andrade?
Just acknowledging that there's more than one letter, right, that we received recently, right? There's a letter that came in our straight, and now there's one in a correspondence. So I really appreciate when Mayor responds to, especially a situation like the GDU, right? There's so many people impacted, and some, you know, they still don't understand the inside of exactly how the problem, you know, took place exactly. And it's very hard sometimes to understand, right? We have more information. So I really appreciate the communication piece. And I have a letter, if I can may bring, from Dorothy Riddle, because last time.
Sorry, is it on this? Is it in the package?
Yes.
Oh, is it? Okay, which one is it?
Yeah, it's on the package on the second.
On the second, okay.
As this correspondence was auto forwarded to the junk mail. I think she just points out that.
I'm sorry, Councilor D'Andrade, I don't see it on the package.
It is on the package, on the first one.
Kathleen Eric.
No, okay.
Joyce.
Oh, sorry.
Point out which one you're talking with. Yeah.
It might have been in the latest one, Councillor D'Andrade, which isn't on our agenda this evening.
Oh, no, it says June 2nd. It's the regular correspondence, including emails. Yeah. Correspondence for the weekend in June 2nd.
Okay, is it in there? We're about to, I'm sorry, I just don't see it on the list.
Number 2, regular correspondence, including emails.
Number 2.
The first item, the first bullet.
from Kathleen Van Erck,
No,
consultant on behalf of Flinro.
no. Number 2, this is number 1, time-sensitive material.
Yes, okay, number 2. Oh, you see, it doesn't have a name. You brought up a name. There's no name. That's the name's being taken off because of freedom of information.
So I just want to bring, because last time I talk about accessibility, and she sent this letter correct that at the time the town hired a consultant, but whatever is the detail, I think what I would like here is the commitment that when the George comes forward, that accessibility will be looked from the professional point of view, because what she's pointed out, and that has not been the case. So I don't know if that was, but we won 2 awards, and this is part of our, agenda. So I would like just whenever the development or the developer decides to start constructions, that this is verified, right? We're not going to do it right now, but I think it's a very important issue. So I don't know if I should make a motion. And okay, maybe the CEO.
Sorry, Councillor, I don't know if you want to make a motion. I try to understand what the issue is you bring up, because you just made a statement around that Ms. Riley wasn't sure about the accessibility of the George. The BC Human Rights Tribunal and the BC Supreme Court both agreed that the town and the development meets accessibility standards, and that we're following every applicable guideline, and that in their view was quite accessible. And I'm not suggesting that there isn't an important issue, but on that specific project, this certainly is not the case.
Okay, I'm obviously, I don't intend to have a full discussion about this, because I think obviously the whole thing it's complicated, but it's just because she responds saying that her case was never heard by by the tribunal. So we are not going to go through the construction right now. I think what I'm asking here is a commitment from council to look at when the time comes. And if everything has been taken care, fine. But I think this is a very important thing, because, in one way we talk about accessibility. And if this is not the truth, fine. But I would like just to make a commitment, because she has the background. I understand that she was a consultant with, is a respectful person. So I would like just to listen to someone that had at the time that the George wrote letters and now is doing again and presenting a case. So I'm not here to present any.
I certainly don't think we should be discussing the George until we have actually comes before us for form and character and all those things, and that way you can look at those things. But and it's like saying that the next building is built on the here has to be affordable. Rather has to be accessible. I believe a lot of that's in the building code now. It has to be accessible. So my position, I would not myself vote in favor of something that far in the future that that any building has to be accessible. That's the rule. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. The writer of the letter, there is a background here. She has a very specific condition. She was instrumental. She attended a workshop we had to help draft the accessibility legislation that the province will be bringing in, and that's all moving forward. So, by the time that we are faced with dealing with new projects coming forward, there are going to be some very strict guidelines that everyone has to follow, regardless of their project.
I appreciate
So,
that.
I think, it's it'll be dealt with.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other correspondence? Councillor Kroll.
I just wanted to reference the hospice. hospice has had a really rough go of it here on the coast. I briefly sat on their board, and at that point we had funded, I believe, 12 beds, and we had 2 because facilities where the beds were situated decided they didn't want hospice anymore, or they changed their nature. We used to have 2 hospice beds here in Gibsons at the Gibsons Garden Inn, and when it went back to a hotel, we lost them, which does make it very difficult for people. The Hospice Society, I believe, was looking at partnering with Trellis with their new development in Seashelt, and that's sort of gone by the boards. They're now looking back at going sort of a redevelopment of Shorncliffe. But I think we have a demographic on this coast that hospice is important to, and it's also regardless of age. People, due to unforeseen circumstances, see that they ultimately have need of hospice. And I think people really need to, you sort of think of it once a year with the little Christmas tree at the mall and you buy a light. It's something that is of real concern to our community. And I think, any opportunity that we can get to raise awareness with hospice, it's important. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to receive those correspondence? Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. Anything further arising? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to,
Mayor Beamish.
yes.
There's a correspondence on the package of June 2nd as well, and it's from the Sunshine Coast Labor Council. Did we respond? There's a proposed motion for local governments. So
No, the purpose of these letters is that we respond once we receive them. The council wants to respond. So did you want to pass a resolution?
yeah, obviously I would like to support like that the town Gibson's demands. I don't know if demands are the best terminology, but it probably is. The federal and provincial governments to provide emergency operating funds to projects vital local service, including public transportation and emergency services. So I think I would like to support that.
Okay. I don't happen to have, well, I do have that package, but and the background of it is that it's not being done now. Is it?
I haven't done further investigation in this case. It's just a motion. We received many motions from other municipalities. In this case, it's from the Sunshine Coast Labor Council. But I think it is an important one. We're talking about, requesting the federal government and the provincials to provide emergency operating funds. So I thought it's of interest of the town, I believe.
I would have to go to the Director of Finance. Do we need emergency operating funds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, the province has put in parameters for us to be able to access short-term money if we need it. And at this point, it's a bit too early to say because it really does depend on how the tax season goes. And I expect that we may see an impact more later in the year. But currently the province has been able to provide us with some options for our cash flow in order to address if the tax payments don't come in on our regular schedule. The town is fortunate in that we don't offer or aren't responsible or dependent on user fees such as recreation or say parking revenue that say other municipalities do, where the revenue is not going to be recovered, where ours is more based on essential services, water, sewer, and taxation, and not a significant amount. I mean, there is a portion, of course, but not a significant amount is as dependent on use. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we fare later in the year. And right now, I'm just really watching the cash flow from a tax perspective. So a bit too early to say.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor D'Andrade, did you want to make a motion?
I think I would like just to bring the discussion if staff doesn't feel that is necessary, right? They have even more understanding, it just called my attention because we talk about emergency funds. We have no idea what's going to happen next. We have no idea if we're going to have a second wave and things are going to go in different directions. So I thought it was, it's the Labor Council. I thought it would be a good motion to support.
So you're moving that? Do you have a seconder?
I can move that. If council needs more time to think about it, I'm happy too. I don't have all the details, but I thought it was just important to mention. I can move that.
Seconder? No seconder, sorry. Thank
No,
you.
no problem.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on then to next item is the new business. 3 items under new business. The first one is the acknowledgement of youth counselors. It is getting towards the end of the school year. I have participated in preparing for the graduation of our youth counselor, Mackenzie. And I think I'm fairly confident that she's going to graduate. And this is either her last meeting or we're going to have another meeting, because I think there's another meeting yet coming up this month. That's special meeting. So that, but I really want to thank you, Ailish, for your time, for the coming on board with council this year. Your commitment to attending meetings and being very present in the meetings and participating in the discussions. That's exactly what we were hoping to achieve. Bringing a youth perspective on issues. You brought to us the Wet'suwet'en issue and the issue of fairness, and brought the issue of racial discrimination, issues that were of concern to youth in our community. And that's very important, and we appreciate that you've done that for us. And you've also worked with Gravity in terms of developing a plan for youth council, which will be part of your legacy when you leave here, if that gets established and goes forward. So I really want to appreciate, thank you for your presence at council meetings, and that everything that you've done and accomplished. You can be very proud of your short time here. And we look forward to the great things you're going to do as you go forward.
Thank you. I just also wanted to thank council. If this is my last meeting, this has just been an awesome experience. I've gained so much knowledge about like civil service, municipal government. That's so important. Also, it's given me an opportunity to use my voice in the town, and that's something that I value so much. So thank you guys for making that possible, and good luck to Gravity next year. It's pretty fun.
Thank you. And to Gravity, thank you for your year. I know that you weren't as present with council, having to, with Ailish attending the meetings, but you were here on occasion and you did participate. And we look forward to your participation next year. Next year, when we come to September, we'll be looking for a replacement. The whole concept that we went forward with here is the idea that we would have a grade 11, grade 12 mix of students, so that the grade 11 student would become the lead student next year. So we look forward to your continued participation with us, and you'll be back in September, and we will carry on looking for somebody. We run our meetings through the end of July for the most part, and but your summer has become busy doing 10 other things, I'm sure, than worrying about attending council meetings. And we take August off generally, so we come back to work in July and September. So Gravity, thank you again very much, and for your participation this year, and we look forward to your leadership next year, especially with the youth council.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yes, thank you. This opportunity is amazing, and I'm looking forward to continuing next year. And the youth council, it'll be a great thing to get on its feet. So I'm looking forward to helping that move forward.
Councilors, I'll leave it to you if you wish to add any congratulations and thank yous. Councilor Kroll.
I just want to commend both of you. It's I think it goes without saying how much I value having the looking at things through the eyes of tomorrow. So it's, you know, you've brought a lot to the table with your insight and comments. And Ailish, I certainly wish you every success, and look forward to working with Gravity next year. And it's certainly going to add a whole new dimension once the youth council's up and running. So really looking forward to it.
Councillor Deidre.
Thank you for your services. And I'm curious, Ailish, are you going to be behind the Sunshine Coast Youth Council? Are you continuing or you're stepping out?
Well, the plan when before COVID happened, the plan was that it would be mostly Gravity helping to facilitate it while I was off at university. However, my personal plans have changed a lot due to COVID. It looks like I'll be staying home and doing distance education online. So maybe I'd have to discuss it with Gravity a bit more, but I'd certainly love to help out and facilitate things more, because I'd love to see how it takes off and help it do so. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Good luck.
Councillor Ladwig.
I just wanted to say thank you to both of you as well. As someone with young daughters, you give me hope for my girls moving forward. So thank you very much for your contribution. It's been great having you.
Councillor Lumley. Oh, applause. Okay. Thank you all very much. And you know, and if there's a meeting next week, we would expect you to get the agenda and be there. And I know that the Director of Finance and Lindsay Grist will look after your remuneration, which is, by the way, a joint project with the Rotary Club, as I think you're aware. So that they're, I don't know, is anybody from Rotary on tonight? Corporate officer, can we? Is there anybody identified from Rotary? I think they got their hand up. I did let them know that I was going to be here. We were thanking you tonight, so that, but they may not have been able to make the meeting. So thank you. So we'll move on to the next one is the Gibson's policing priorities for 2020 and 2021. And CAO, would you introduce us, please, and the background to this?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So every year, the local RCMP detachments of the local police service, they check in with local council, and they obviously have their own work plan, but part of their plan involves consulting with the community on what are the community's priorities. And over the last few years, council has highlighted the need to have a youth engagement strategy with the RCMP, also visibility on the Gibson streets, and where appropriate in the summertime, have a presence on the water as well, as the increase in traffic that we've had on that area as well. So those generally have been the areas. So it's a check-in that they do annually. So is there anything as in the past or something different that you want to highlight to Staff Sergeant Poppy for her work plan for the year?
Thank you. Does council have any thoughts on that? Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Back in the 80s, the local RCMP detachment had summer works programs with youth, and they were really great. They got involved in, just doing things like, doing information, neighborhood watch programs. They would, canvass neighborhoods and pass out information on, different programs, that could be done through the RCMP, but the youth were sort of the messengers of it. The one summer they did, it was, and I think things have changed a bit. They did a thing where you could go and they had a thing you could list serial numbers of things that were frequently sort of items of theft. So they'd be recorded with the RCMP. So if you lost your stereo, the serial number was on file. So there were, and even with beachcombers, we got involved with them, and we would help design and build their float for the Sea Cavalcade Parade. So again, I think it's great to get youth involved at a young age in being aware of what goes on in the community. So, I think it's a really valuable thing if we can get sort of more youth involvement.
Thank you. I would like to see the bring into attention, especially in this year, the first year with our supportive housing program coming into place. I'm not sure what the timeline for completion of that is, but the RCMP becoming involved with the Community Advisory Committee for the supportive housing project, and working with the BC Housing and the neighborhood and community on that issue. A lot of concern was raised as we were going through that process. We don't know what the results are going to be, but I think that we need to put it on the RCMP's radar, that they be prepared to be part of the advisory committee or part of the discussions within the community on policing and working with the community in that regard. So that's one thing I'd like to bring to their attention in terms of local patrols, and that's probably going to be more of a fall item given where they are with the construction, but something we want to bring to their attention, that we're aware that that project is being done. Any other?
Sorry, duly noted, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Seeing none of you would prepare a response, and if the council comfortable with the issues that are raised there and with which we discussed, and make a motion that we respond and consistent with that discussion. Councillor Crowell.
I'm willing to make that motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Lumley, thank you. Any further discussion? Can say the RCMP being very involved with us with regards to the Business Watch and being very active and being very present in the community. I was out at midnight, Saturday night sort of thing, and talking to the member. They're very involved in the community right now, so appreciate that. So all in favor? Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay. The third item is the one I added at the top of the agenda, and that's the resolution number 2020-264, the temporary use permit for recreational vehicle site at 718 North Road. The resolution itself is as written, page 11 of our agenda, 11 and 12, the 10 points that were raised. My reason for bringing this back is that you'll recall that at that night we were kind of drafting on the run. And we did have the developer, the owner, present, and we were negotiating with him as we went through. I wanted to make sure the council was very clear of the results of that negotiation and getting things out there, as well as we were not a full council, and I wanted to make sure it's a full council. The decision that we made will affect the lives of 7 or 8 people who live on the site. And I want council to be wary. I'm sure you've had 2 weeks now to think about it and decide which direction you might like to go in. You can reaffirm in your resolution thing, but the resolution we were voting on tonight would be exactly the same resolution, and that's on page 3 of the agenda for the temporary use permit. So, discussion, Councillor Lumley.
I was actually missing that meeting. And I guess there's a couple of things that concern me about, I guess, what happened at the meeting. One is that the Planning and Development Committee voted unanimously in favor of it and to take it to council. I actually looked at the agenda. I looked at the meeting agenda. I knew I couldn't make it, but I'm always concerned about what might be on there that I should have input into or have say into. And the Planning and Development Committee, which also has 2 people from members of the community, all voted in favor of it with the conditions that we had put on the application. So that was the first thing that concerned me. And the second thing was that when it got to council, the very same people, and I don't know, Mr. Mayor, you'd have to correct me, but the very same councillors that voted unanimously in favor of it then voted against it. So you can see the difficulties with this situation on several levels. The fact that if I was a developer, or if I had a permit application in, or so on and so forth, and I attended, albeit Zoom, it's not like it was, but I attended a meeting where all councillors sat on the Planning and Development Committee and voted unanimously in favor of something, and to move it to a council meeting, I'd start spending money. I'd start planning. I'd be doing things. I'd be like saying, okay, and then, you have this time period that lapses, it comes to council and it gets defeated. It's like, if I was a developer or asking for this, and this is a temporary use permit. This isn't the George Hotel. This is like a temporary use permit. There's people already living there. And then on top of it, it's just getting changed. Like, for what reasons? It goes from 12 to a 7 project. I don't even understand that. There's enough room, there's enough square area on that site to allow for 12 RVs, And then when you take a look at who's living there, they're just normal people. Like, there's people raising children there. And this is where the state of our housing is. And it's not just Gibsons, it's everywhere. And it went from the Planning and Development Committee saying it was affordable housing, which it is. This is a form of affordable housing. And we made some amendments to some changes that we thought would make it more acceptable for the neighborhood, for the community. And I'm telling you, some of the letters that are some of the people from the community who are writing in that aren't even close to this site I'm embarrassed for the community. Some of those things that people are saying, these are people like without means or with very little means, right? I mean, it just seems, it seemed like it went from this compassionate Planning and Development Committee meeting to just this heartless committee meeting. And I'm sorry that I wasn't there. I'd be saying the same things, but now I'm saying them today because I'm here. But I mean, so again, the first thing is the council went back on what they originally said. And my second problem is now it's like, I'd almost be in favor of going back to an APC committee, like a different formula for planning and development, because it's going to confuse. If we're flip-flopping between meetings, it's just going to be, if I'm someone applying for something, like I said, a permit or something, I'm just going to be confused, I think, and we look kind of silly. So those are my comments. I don't know if anybody can answer them, but yeah.
I think if I could comment on the first part, and that is that, you realize that a recommendation from the Planning and Development Committee is just that. And the decision there was to advertise the temporary use permit and invite comment. And council needs to have the opportunity to consider that comment, as well as other inputs that they get in that intervening period. And no doubt councilors did that. And so the negotiation that took place with the changes that took place were all negotiated with the owner, and he has agreed to them. I did, subsequent to the meeting, because I was informed that the owner actually intended to go away and give notice to everybody as of July the 1st and to have them out. I went back to him and told him my intention to bring it back for reconsideration, provided he still wanted to proceed. And I said that it would be reconsideration, though, on the basis of the agreements that he made, which was as is written in this resolution. And we reviewed that, and he agreed that if it did come back and if it was supported, he would be prepared to abide by the resolution. But his initial response was to move on himself, but he is prepared to, if council supports this resolution tonight, to abide by the terms of a temporary use permit with these conditions. So to inform you that. Councillor Kroll, you had your hand up. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. And just to sort of, you know, I totally agree with Councillor Lumley. You know, when people are getting mixed messages, it is difficult. I was, quite frankly, a little surprised to see the thing come back, go to council before the requests that we'd made in the Planning and Development Committee hadn't come back as approved. Between the Planning and Development Committee, when the things were asked for, when they arrived at council, a number of the items that had been asked for were weren't going to be complied with. So my concern was for the residents. You know, I realize housing is at a critical level in this town, and I applauded it. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to provide an affordable option. But when I saw items that were on the wish list dropping off between the Planning and Development Committee and Council, I was concerned, and that's why I couldn't support it. We were getting towards a compromise when the vote was called, but it was too confusing of what was on the table and what was off the table. So I couldn't support it. And, you know, if you want a reason, that's why.
Councillor Ladwig.
Sorry, I'm just struggling with this whole conversation. First of all, so it's not in our agenda this evening.
It is. It is. I put it on under new business.
I know, but I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what the resolution.
It's in the minutes of the last meeting.
Right. Okay. So it's just really hard to work from different.
Yeah, it's on page 11 of your agenda package.
Okay.
Yeah.
And right now we're just voting. We're re-voting on that resolution.
Corporate officer.
I was just wondering if you'd like me to share the resolution wording on the screen so everybody can refer to it.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, there's the resolution 264. So the wildlife resistant garbage container to be provided and arranged to be collected fortnightly. All outdoor fridge and freezers to be placed in wildlife resistant containers. Privacy screening along Hillcrest Road to be provided. A rental cap of $500 per pad for the duration of the temporary use permit. A security bond of $5,000 be collected by the town to cover costs of site remediation, including towing of RVs from the property. Security bond of $2,000 to be collected by the town to cover costs for engineer review of the implication of the town's sanitary sewer in light of North Road sanitary sewer diversion work. No CCANs on the property. Temporary use permit be for a maximum of 3 years with no opportunity for renewal. Property has a maximum of 7 pads. Current tenants be notified of maximum 3-year term with no option for renewal. Okay, any questions on the resolution? Councillor Lumley?
Why was it set at 7 pads?
That's what's existing. So there'll be no expansion to what exists.
And the feedback from the proponent on 7 pads?
He will accept that. He accepted it that night. He agreed to that at the meeting.
Okay.
I can't see Councilor D'Andrade on my screen because it's gone to small screen now. So, okay, there. I can see. Okay, Councilor D'Andrade, your hand's up. Okay.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I think it's a lot to do with just responding to Councillors Lumley. I think it's the process, right? I think I would prefer, if it was possible, obviously, that you hear from the community first, the neighborhood first, and then you go to the Planning and Development Committee. So I don't think we can change this process, but that's one of the consequences, because I'm not thinking all the details. And then when you have a feedback from the community, you have more information. So, and you think different. I think after thinking about this project, obviously I'm fully in support of affordable housing, but I don't think this is this is not really obviously a long-term solution. And in my view, the tenants are vulnerable regardless, because the proponent himself, he said, I might decide to do constructions way before than 3 years. So, and at the same time, the tenants, they are protected under the tenancy laws. So nobody will be evicted, especially in the face of the pandemic, nobody will be evicted. And after we understand where this pandemic is going, then they would have a notice. So regardless, these tenants will be there for 1.5 years at least, and which might even coincide with the period that the owner would decide to start construction. So I see a little bit of providing a very temporary, but potentially causing other problems. And one of the problems that I when I thought about it, okay, we required them to remove all the tarps, obviously because of the impact in the neighborhood. But RVs, they do leak. So what happened is, if they start leaking, are we gonna tell the tenants that they cannot have the tarp? So they don't have, is there a solution? Is anyone providing tarps like of equal colors or something that there's no impact? And that's the part that I felt, even though I know staff put a lot of work into this proposal, and I can only imagine, but these are still unanswered questions. And given that, you know, the town does not have it has a bylaw officer, but not that they can monitor every single thing. There has been complaints in the past, and it took over 2 years for any response. So when you see this situation adding up, I feel a little bit uneasy, because you're providing, like, now, okay, the tenants can stay longer, but we're not really solving their situation. And when I also I saw the letter from the former councillor White, and he interviewed he interviewed some people, but he got the makeup of the community. You know, some people actually start thinking there's someone in disability. Is this person going to the supportive housing? I hope he does. So if he goes, what happens? Are we bringing someone else to replace him? So now we're opening another expectation. And I have difficulty trying to solve a problem that is not really solving problem and potentially causing problems in the neighborhood, because we told the tenants that they have to remove the tarps. But now, so we solve a problem of the neighborhood that was one of the impacts, but now we create a potential problem for the tenants. And I don't see. And then one of my last concerns is with precedent. I tend to be, the way I think is democratically. So if we are saying yes to this temporary situation, is it fair that someone else says, well, I have a lot. Let's do a temporary 3 years too. Are we ready to do that? So these are all the questions that are still in my mind that and that's what makes me uncomfortable. So first of all, the tenants, we're not gonna evict them. They are protected by the tenancy and even in face of COVID. So they will be there for 1.5 years. And I'm comfortable with that, because nobody's gonna, well, they're protected by law anyways. But to give the TUP, I feel uncomfortable, because I don't see that is really resolving the situation. It's not that even the developer said, well, I'm gonna wait 3 years so these people have time to accommodate. He can develop anytime, which is also of interest from the town. So what are we doing? Are we just, I didn't understand what's the purpose of that. Are we just helping the developer in the meantime? And the developer says that it's helping people, but when I look at what is really helping people, I still have difficulty. So that's my resistance. And Mayor Beamish, if I can ask you a question, I know you raised the possibility of attrition. So because there is one person already that wants to move because she's not satisfied with this place. So does it mean that it will be reduced to 6th place?
No.
No, okay, so he will continue bringing people, and that's to me is another concern. So we are just saying, hey, live here, but you're gonna have a notice of a year anyway, so it's nothing permanent. So that's my concern.
Councilor Ladwig, I think I saw your hand up.
To be honest, I don't even remember what the comment was now. It was so long ago. I mean, basically just that I still support the motion that we made at our last meeting.
Okay. Councilor Lumley?
I'm still confused. I think wasn't a staff recommendation, like, I mean, I can see I went back in the minutes, but wasn't this, I'd have to go back to the agenda, but wasn't the staff recommendation for 12 units?
It was.
Originally?
It was.
Okay, how did we get to 7?
Through the discussion, it was requested by council, councilors that it be reduced to 7.
Okay. I mean, there's probably some forms of, there's probably a form of some sort of economic scale, I'm sure, that he's looked at to say, okay, like if he's providing electricity, sewer, taxes and everything, he's just charging them $500. There's probably some happy medium there that he could provide all this for them and potentially as a business person turn a profit. I'm not sure if, sometimes I find it hard, like the temporary use permit, I have a difficulty with like council getting into somebody's business. And I have difficulty if a counselor says like, you know, we're not helping their situation. Like we actually are helping their situation, or at least we're maintaining their situation. But by doing other things, we can be hindering their situation. And I don't know if that's the right way to go either. So, I mean, we can't bring in subjective thinking or comments into decision-making. I think it's got to be a little bit more clear and to the point and look at recommendations. I mean, you may not agree with it, well, that's great. But I know by not providing someone a home, well, I'm certainly not helping them in that respect.
Before we go on to further discussion, I need a resolution to continue this meeting. So what's council's wish? We have an in-camera meeting yet to go. And that will take some time from what I can see with that agenda. So what's council's wish? Do you want to go to 9:30 or 9:45? I'm going to suggest that given the in-camera and the items are on the camera, we make a motion to extend the meeting till 9:45. I'll move that. Councilor Kroll seconded it. All in favor of 9:45? Okay. Okay, that's unanimous then. We're on to 9:45. Okay, further discussion. Councilor Kroll, did you have your hand up again? Oh, sorry, Councilor Ladwig did.
Obviously, I can't speak for the rest of council, but I do recall and remember why I chose to go from 12 pads to 7. And that was simply that whether it was in the previous agenda package that was at the Planning and Development Committee or not, either way for me, it became clear to me what the long-term plans were for the site. And like Councillor DeAndrade said, it's not a permanent solution. And I can tell you, I've personally known a number of people in my life that have lived in fifth wheel trailers in situations like this, my father being one of them. And when they need to move, it is very stressful and it's very difficult to relocate them because it's not like there's a lot of RV sites around on the Sunshine Coast to accommodate them. And so I don't want to encourage, the other thing, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on with this. For one thing, it's often those individuals' largest investment, and they don't want to just get rid of it when the time comes for them to move. Saying that they can move into one of the Affordable Housing Society projects, which is possible and would be great. That's not our decision. That's the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society's selection process. And I don't know what involvement we'll have in that. So we can't guarantee that. And having 12 RVs all of a sudden need to relocate potentially all at the same time and try to find a new location to park those RVs on the Sunshine Coast, I think will be tough. So I supported 7 because that's who's currently living on site. And by no means do I want to make somebody homeless who is already dependent on that facility, but I don't support growing that facility for a temporary purpose at this time. Had he been planning, and that was the other thing, had he been planning to turn that into an RV park long-term, I mean, that's originally kind of what I was thinking was going on. And I could have been open to that. There's a very nice facility on Cemetery Road, very clean, respectable. There's RVs parked there. I would have been receptive to talking about that, but it just isn't the individual's long-term plan, and that's totally fine. So I support the individuals that are currently living there, and when and as the time goes on, I hope they can find new homes. That's the way I look at it.
Councillor Kroll.
Just sort of follow up to Councillor Ladwig. I think we all agreed that we didn't want to see a problem exacerbated by more people being put in a situation when the ultimate outcome of this property was decided. But I think there's another issue here. We don't have an RV park within the town of Gibsons per se. And it may be something that should be looked at a little closer, because tiny homes fall under RV classification. So an RV park ostensibly would permit tiny homes. So, there are options here that I think thank you, Mr. Danroth, for, bringing, our attention to it. But I think, knowing now that residents of an RV park, whether it's an RV park approved by a TUP or an RV park operated by the intent of accommodating RVs, the residents of that park are protected under the RV and mobile home legislation of residential tenancy. So, that's a box ticked. But I think we need to look at the housing options. I had an opportunity very briefly to speak with the Sun Coast Tiny Homes, and she said her phone's ringing off the hook. People are looking at getting out of the lower mainland. They don't have the equity in their property there to be able to sell it and buy a house, but they can't afford a tiny home. And they're in a position they could do that. And she said, she's potentially swamped with business if these calls turn into actual orders. So the demand for RV park facilities is only going to be exacerbated by this, this exodus from urban areas. So I think, Mr. Danroth has brought up an issue, and we should be looking at the potential of, if it's possible, looking at the option of creating a proper, RV park.
Councillor D'Andrade.
Yeah, I fully agree. And this was one of the goals of having an affordable housing strategy. And I know the town has working really hard to come up with, and the meeting today was a good example of, all these bylaws. But I would like still to see the strategy, because the strategy would involve that. And now we are working on a situation, and we can be proactive, consult the community, do a brainstorming before even we figure out what would be the feasible places, and that's the direction. Because my fear with this property, the developer himself, he said he's not making money. So it's not about that. It's bringing one more person that's gonna have to be evicted. So at least if you have these people and that's why I voted against, because we are not evicting them. They're gonna be there. They have 1.5 years to find a place. But my fear is giving the temporary permit. It could be that a person lives in 1.5 years and someone comes, and now you get another notice. So it's just like creating a more influx, and that's to me, it's even worse, because when you don't have an opportunity, it's fine, right? But when you have the hopes, and now you live here. So I'm not concerned these people won't be evicted, but I am concerned in approving this TUP because of the reason.
Okay, I think everybody's, oh, I see another hand up. Councillor Kroll.
No, I was just going to suggest we call the question.
I'm prepared to call the question. My reasons are the same as last time. I believe that council, our staff has an approach to excuse me, our town has an approach of working with property owners, working with to solve problems, and that's how this was brought for us. It was obviously almost getting to be a derelict site, and it's going to be cleaned up and improved, and we're allowing the accommodation to continue as is. So we're resolutions that we make, decisions that we make at this table. Unfortunately, for the tenants of that property, they do not get a vote. They do not even get a say. I don't even know if they got a notice of the TUP, and they live on the site. We make decisions that are far-reaching and have impact on the lives of families. And I think we want to be very cautious how we make those decisions. I will vote in favor. Now, before we do that, corporate officer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to suggest one slight change to the motion, because it currently mentions that the conditions must be in place by June 30th. And given that it's been 2 weeks, we might want to look at moving that back to July 14th.
It allows Inland to have a clear month to do that. Would somebody change that? Councillor Kroll, would you?
I'll move as amended.
Okay, and seconder for that amendment, Councillor Ludwig. Okay, call on the question. The question doesn't get moved or seconded. It's the question is on the table. So that call the question. All in favor? Councillor Lumley, you voting opposed or in favor? Can't hear you. Oh.
No, I'm in favor of 12 pads, not 7. So I'll be opposed to the, I'll have to be opposed to it.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's 3 opposed. Okay, 2, thank you. It passes. Thank you. It's approved. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda. Let's get back to my agenda. There it is. Somebody commented, by the way, in correspondence that Mayor Beamish is doing things down to his left. That's my agenda. Yeah. Councillor, corporate officer.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder that the Director of Finance's revised reports were gone back to.
We could have adjourned. Okay, let's go back to the Director of Finance then. Thank you. We're back to 8.3 and 8.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to review the reports while the meeting continued. I appreciate that. So I had a look at the Sophie report that was presented to Council on June the 2nd, and Councillor Lumley's expenses were listed as $1,029, which is the same as the revised report. And I'm wondering through you, Mr. Mayor, if Councillor Lumley is thinking of the Q1 staff report that was brought to Council in May, and that covered Q1 for 2020, and that had a 0 expense amount.
That could be.
Potentially, okay. So the 1,029 related to costs relating to UBCM back in 2019 that were tied to Councillor Lumley. So the only changes that were required on Sophie then are the ones that were highlighted.
Councillor Lumley, do you recall UBCM?
I didn't go.
Yeah, unfortunately, the conferences, there do have deadlines for refunds, and I believe the deadline was missed for that. So although you didn't get to go, the expenses did follow you a little bit, so.
Oh.
That's right. I remember that. You had a reservation, but weren't able to take it up.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
Okay,
can,
thank you. Thank you very much, Director of Finance. So now we'll go back to the two reports and voting on them. So somebody move the revised 2019 Statement of Financial Information be approved. Somebody move. Councillor Diandrad, Councillor Kroll, all in favor? Thank you. And somebody move that the 2019 report of council remuneration expenses and contracts be approved. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diandrad, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Those are approved.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could just add one more comment, I wanted just to make a quick comment about Councillor Diandrad's comment about the letter from Sunshine Coast Labor about the federal and provincial financing. I
Yes.
did speak to the revenue side for the town, but I didn't mention the cost side for the town. And we are seeing expenses relating to COVID that are the majority of which are not being funded or covered by the emergency program. And so we can see those ones adding up as we go. So far, it's been about $12,000 for 2 months. Considering COVID is going to be continuing throughout the year and we still have to have all the procedures in place in order to keep everyone safe, staff and the public, I expect we will get some costs continuing. I mean, so far they're not dramatic, but they may add up. But again, it'll be a bit easier to determine that as later in the year. That being said, other municipalities are in pretty dire straits. So I don't want to discourage council from not encouraging funding from other levels of government. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good point. And thank you for looking at that. So Councillor Diandrad, you want to go back to that motion? And
Yes.
And okay, so your motion is, we need to get it for the record.
To receive we already received to support the resolution. I have to open again, but they were asking support, right?
Yeah.
That okay, let me see. Sorry, I closed the file. 1 sec.
Would be sufficient to say that we write a letter to the federal and provincial governments requesting support for unplanned COVID expenses and uncovered, unplanned and unreimbursed COVID expenses.
I think so. I don't know why the report disappeared. Okay, one more round.
Yeah.
Well, the resolution is there. I think they're supporting just we can copy the exact resolution, right? That the demand the government, whatever.
Councillor Kroll, do you have?
The proposed motion for local governments, because our local governments and town councils, big or small, rural or urban, are on the front lines of something that the most pressing challenges facing Canada, because municipal workers are going flat out to deliver public services that keep us safe during the COVID-19 crisis, because municipal revenues are collapsing and anticipated costs are soaring, because without financial help, cities and towns will be forced to cut vital local services or to our families and communities that our families and communities rely on, because transportation makes our communities more livable and fights climate change. The town of Gibsons demands federal and provincial governments to provide emergency operating funds to protect the vital local services, including public transportation and emergency services. So that's the proposed motion that's cited within this letter from Ed Erickson, president of the Sunshine Coast Labor Council.
Thank you. I cannot find. Is it the second or the 8th?
It's a second. It's
I don't know. It disappeared.
no, it's there. in the package of the 8th. It's dated 2020-0528.
CAO, did you have something to say?
I wonder if it would be appropriate to suggest a slight change of wording. We have received some funds federally and provincially, and I wonder if to instead of demanding funds, it would sort of reflect that kind of situation, but to continue to provide funds, and because there's going to be other phases coming on, and we're, as Lorraine has pointed out early in the meeting, we're still not sure about our position, but realistically, we have benefited from some funds already. Just so we could capture that a little bit more.
I appreciate that. I was not comfortable with the word demand myself, so. Councillor Kroll?
I think, this letter is coming from the Sunshine Coast Labor Council, and their concern, which is understandable, like, for example, in Vancouver, when BC Transit reduced services, how many bus drivers were laid off, how many mechanics were laid off, how many cleaners were laid off. So what they're looking to do is protect the employment of members of the Labor Council. So I think, as the CAO was referring and the Director of Finance reported, we are incurring costs, whether they fall under labor per se. But I think it's important that the Director of Finance, keep us appraised of the costs we're incurring with respect to this pandemic. And I think, on behalf of the town of Gibsons and the regional district and the district of Sechelt, that, cooperatively, we raise the flag that, we're going to be looking for, support. Having said support, the money ultimately comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. So, there is a bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul on this occasion. And, my, Illyria's great-granddaughter will be paying for it.
So do we have a motion? And are we going to just move on? And Councillor Kroll?
I would move that we ask the Director of Finance to keep us appraised of costs as they escalate with respect to this, and that in the interim, we look at partnering with the other levels of government on the coast and expressing our concerns.
Sounds good. Seconder?
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Andrade will take your seconder. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. Thank you. And thank you for bringing that back. Thank you, Director of Finance. Okay, there are no notices of motion. We'll go to inquiries.
At this point, I'll ask anybody who's in the meeting as an attendee to please use the raise the hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll promote you to panelists so that your audio and video can be turned on. And Mr. Mayor, I see one at this point.
Okay. Okay, Suzanne Singer. Yeah.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Hello, thanks. Mr. Mayor, I have a question about report in the minutes of the June 2nd PDC meeting that's attached to this agenda. It's the report, it was discussed again at the PDC today, the report on the development permit application process for DPAs 1, 2, and 9. There seemed to be a fair amount of confusion at the PDC committee on the 2nd and again today about sort of what the purpose and intent and the background of this meeting, or pardon me, of this report was. And, as a result, the PDC of June 2nd sort of punted the report to the June 16th meeting, and then the report was once again punted to a council meeting, an upcoming council meeting, seemingly because it's just not clear to the folks in the conversation, why the report was written, what it's intended to do. And so I just wonder, how between now and the next council meeting, how that might be addressed, whether the council might, I don't know, direct staff to provide a bit of background on the purpose of this report, just for the benefit of the conversation, being more informed.
My recollection is that the initial report was brought forward because council had asked to see those policies and the bylaw, and then in looking at them, it was decided that they may be some merit in reviewing them because they're dated, and had that opportunity. Now, there was a resolution tonight that they be brought forward at a future meeting. Perhaps Councillor Ladwig, you would speak to it. I wasn't at the meeting today.
I was just going to say that at that meeting today, we made a motion. We made recommendations for council's consideration, thanks to Councillor DeAndrade jogging our memories on what exactly it was, what items within those DPs we might want to review. And so we put some wording together on that, made 2 recommendations that will then go to council. And what I was hoping was that at that council meeting, that we, if through the P&D committee, we didn't quite capture the essence of what it is that we're trying to do through that review, we could refine the recommendations there. And at that point, ask staff to come back to us in the fall with a report.
They
I think
came
to answer Suzanne's question. Sorry, what's that?
They came to council tonight. They were added into the agenda.
No. But the motions weren't there. That's why I was confused by it.
No.
Yeah, it was just the minutes of the meeting. Sorry, it was just the minutes of the meeting of the 2nd that came to council tonight. And so that motion from the PDC today will be to the next council meeting. That's my understanding.
Correct.
Right. And so, yeah, my question really sort of relates to so I'm very clear on what the background of that request of March 3rd and that resolution was about and relates to. And it doesn't seem to me that there's no background in the staff report, and it just seems like a missing piece. And so I just wondered, whether or not that might be addressed, or I can write you guys a letter. That's okay. I just thought I would ask you.
Well, we'll look at that. Obviously, it'll come back forward. I wasn't at that meeting today. I was at another meeting. So, Councillor Brad, do you have something to add?
Yeah, the purpose was to ask for a staff report on the 2 suggestions, on the implications of the 2 suggestions that you made. One was regarding DPA 1 and 2, and adding the box which would allow for the professional just to say, is there a need for a peer review? And the other issue that you raised as well, it was in regards to the development the delegation authority, when you said, okay, we can add another clause to allow for the public, right? Because if the director of planning makes a decision, there's an opportunity for the developer to appeal, but there's no opportunity for a member of the public to appeal. So my understanding, that was the motion, right? That we asked for a staff report. And this is just one piece of the information, because we haven't discussed exactly what the change will be, which we can do on the next meeting.
That's it will come back to us. We're eating very heavily into a long encounter right now. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're is there anything else? Any other questions there? So seeing none, like a resolution pursuant to sections 91E, G, and I of the community charter, that a part of the meeting may be closed to the public. Subject matter being considered relates to or is more of one of the following: the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements that the council considers disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. Motion? Councillor Crowell, Councillor Ladwig, all in favor? Thank you. Let's go quickly into the closed meeting so that we can actually get it done.